Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a video covering 3 new budget IEMs. I've got the Chinos for $100, the Nuos at I think $25, and the Zero 2 at $20. The Zero 2 is a collaboration with Critical, but I don't want you guys to be confused. This is not the truthier Critical Zero, which is a totally different shell, different company, different tuning, different driver orientation, and different quality dynamic drivers. The Zero 2 from 7Hz is a single dynamic driver and has a very different shell, which is quite a bit smaller and one that fits very differently. I think if you have smaller ears, I don't think that you would find these very offensive. Very lightweight, pretty cool transparent shell there that looks pretty cool. And it has a tuning which is a little bit more neutral with warmth to it, and a lower region that is a little bit more weighty than something like the Nuo, which is also kind of V-shaped, but definitely has more upper mid-range presence. Vocals stick out a little bit more in comparison to the Zero 2. So keep in mind, if you're somebody who wants a little bit more sub-bass rumble vocals and that upper mid-range that doesn't kind of have more presence in the track, you might lean for music listening to the Zero 2. But the Nuo I found to have a punchy bass as well. I don't think that you'd be totally without a nice punch to the bass going to the Nuo. It's just the vocals kind of sit above everything else and I think sound fantastic. The timbre on both of these sets is great. And I do think that for their respective price points, for entertainment, music listening, 2 really nice sets. Again, vocals just that upper mid-range and the presence regions having a little bit more than the Zero 2s, which just kind of feel a little bit more weight towards the lower regions. I do think that the Nuo has better micro detail. I think the Nuo has better stage, and I think the Nuo has better depth and imaging. The imaging on the Zero 2 is pretty good. I do find that verticality when things are going over your head falls off quite a bit. It becomes something that kind of just cuts too close to your region in game. And I do think that that presence region being a little bit greater on the Nuo and the upper mid-range, I find there to be more air in the space when you get in-game, particularly when you're A and B testing these. I think the thing that will hit you the most is that gunshots do sound a little bit louder on the Nuo, particularly ones with that upper mid-range, but it's not conflated to the point where it is blocking anything else out in the track. Any other audio cues out. I find that the presence, just the air in the stage, depth is easier to read on the Nuo. Because these are both single dynamic drivers, sometimes there's issues with single dynamics, with smearing, with separation and layering. I find the Nuo to be much better in those regions than the Zero 2. The Zero 2, when you take these into Apex or a deathmatch in CS2 or a team deathmatch in Valorant, when there's a lot going on, the Zero 2 just has a large issue separating everything out and being able to provide you a large array of those audio cues that you need to listen to in order to be quite a bit more successful when there are hectic third parties, fourth parties, fifth parties, etc. in Apex. The Nuo actually does the best job on the table and is something that's actually quite impressive and performs somewhat similarly to the Ziigaat EM 6L, just not quite as good in the separation and layering region, in my opinion. I do think that the Zero 2, you get a little bit more of a entertainment feel in game. Gunshots have a little bit more sub-bass emphasis to them, a little bit more theatrical, like what you would expect when you go to the movie theater and you're watching Die Hard. But again, the imaging, it was good. There is a sense of depth. It's just not enough in comparison to the other things on the Wallhack certified tier list to really cut the mustard. And then with those issues with separation and layering, smearing, etc., it's just not something that I would recommend. And even, again, the micro detail, less on the Zero 2, in my opinion, than the Nuo. The Nuo, I think, again, it's a great set for the price for a music and entertainment listening experience. If you're somebody who likes that a little bit more rumble, you can, again, go to the Zero 2. I think either of these sets, if you're looking for a beater to take to work, travel with, or go to the gym, etc., both of them will provide a nice tuning at that price point. For gaming, another thing that I want to point out is the verticality, much better on the Nuo. So when things are going over your head, or the Zero 2 actually also had an issue I found when something is in front of me and behind me going on at the same time. It's almost like it wanted to combat and go over my head. And when things are going over my head, it's very hard to read on the Zero 2. The Nuo did not have that issue. I think the Nuo has good imaging, good depth, good stage, good verticality, and decent separation and layering, good enough to get on the Wallhack certified tier list. Again, especially at that price point. At that $25 price point, I just can't quite think of anything else that I would put above it. But I do quite like the QKZ HBB as well. Now, getting to the Cinno and throwing up the Cinno on a graph here with the other IEMs. Well, actually, let me show you guys the graph for the Nuo with the Ziigaat EM6L, and you can see quite how similar they are. Of course, the EM6L having a different driver orientation, being quite a bit more expensive, but I do think that the Ziigaat EM6L, the difference in the competitive features does justify the price, particularly when we get to, again, separation and layering. I think single dynamic drivers, sometimes within this range, this bracket, can have a struggle with separation and layering. Now, when we get back to the Zero 2, the Cinno, and the Nuo, you can see that the Cinno just doesn't have as much emphasis in the lower regions, and then it actually kind of falls off as well in that upper mid-range, and then the treble region, that presence region. I don't find the listening experience to be bad at all for music. It's actually one that's very inoffensive. It's a smooth listening experience, one that has, I think, impactful bass still, just not massive rumble or massive mid-bass that's going to kind of have presence compared to anything else. The upper mid-range, likewise, just doesn't really shine through above anything else. It's a very neutral set, one that I think sounds good for music and entertainment, but again, for gaming purposes, it just didn't perform as well as I wanted it to for a 1DD 4BA hybrid. It didn't perform as well as the Ziigaat EM6L, unfortunately. I do think that if you have smaller ears, it kind of has like the fit of a Moondrop Aria. The shell's quite small. For me, it was almost like too awkwardly small. But overall, I think the fit, on all three of these was quite good. The Cinno, though, for competitive gaming, it's not something that I would put on the Wallhack certified tier list. The imaging is pretty good. The depth is pretty good. The separation and layering kind of falls off a little bit as well. And I just wish that there was a bigger sound stage, and I wish the presence, that air feeling was a little bit better so that depth was more readable. I think there's just too much of a fall off with depth reads, the sound stage not being how I want it, and the separation and layering. So again, two IEMs here that just didn't quite cut the mustard for me for gaming purposes. But if you are on a tight budget, I would definitely recommend checking out the Ziigaat Nuos. I did change the ear tips on these to the Tengzu Senkai ear tips. I found them to be a lot better than the default tips. So if your budget allows you to get some nicer tips as well, I do think that it made a difference on the Nuo, and was just a more enjoyable, just not only for comfort and fit, but did provide a little bit of that alteration that I wanted for gaming as well. Again, it affects it minutely, but I did find it to work better for me than the default ear tips on the Nuo. So the Ziigaat Nuo, a pretty damn awesome set for gaming, particularly at the price point. I think if you have the extra funds to spend for something like the Truther Chronicle Zero, that would still be my recommendation. Or if you have the extra funds for the Ziigaat EM6L, still my number one, the Ziigaat EM6L for the Wallhack certification tier list. But the Ziigaat Nuo, $25, pretty damn solid. That's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope it helped. If it did, please leave a sub to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next review. Peace.